In what's turning out to be the most anticipated event in the U.S. presidential elections, the former U.S. President Donald Trump has taken on Vice President Kamala Harris in a debate on a stage in Philadelphia in the swing state of Pennsylvania. It was their first and possibly it could be the last debate. And it did cover a lot of ground. A lot of issues came up for debate. From economic policies, diplomacy, civil issues like housing and abortion. The Democratic and Republican candidates have shared their vision for America. But also they've taken plenty of personal jabs at each other, like the turnout at the election rallies. In fact, many experts tout Harris as the winner of that debate. But the real test is going to be at the polls. So how will this debate and everything that was said there, or even not said, how is that going to impact the American voter, especially the undecided ones? Has the debate helped the swing states decide how they want to cast their vote? Now, that remains an important question. Just listen in to what we heard in that debate.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation.
I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
To discuss everything that the debate brought to the fore by way of the American economy, by way of the politics playing out in the U.S. and how this could influence the swing voter, let's bring in our guest. Alastair Newton is CEO at Alavan Business Advisory, and joining us with him is Adelle Nazarian, Senior Fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Both, thank you very much for making the time and joining us on India Tonight. Let me ask you first, Alastair, 8 weeks to go before the United States goes ahead and votes. All said and done by both sides in that debate, who do you think has the edge?
Polls tell us that nobody has the edge, and although we've learned to be slightly cautious about polls, I'm still very inclined to think at the moment that this election remains very much a toss-up. I don't put a lot of credibility on the flash polls, with all due respect to the pollsters. And I don't really put a lot of weight on the issue of who won the debate. The consensus is that Hillary Clinton won all three debates in 2016, and we all know what happened when it came to the election. I will be interested to see if there is any movement in the polls by roughly the weekend, and especially in the better quality polls. But right now, I think your first point is the important point. We still have 8 weeks bar a day to go. In the past 8 weeks, we've seen many twists and turns. We may yet see more, whether or not there is a second debate. And my sense at the moment is probably we are not looking at another debate, despite the Harris team immediately putting its hand up and demanding one, which tells us something. It tells us that they at least felt that Kamala Harris actually won last night. And looking across the broad range of views, especially coming out of the US commentariat, and I'm including some of the commentators in Fox on this, I think that in general, Ms. Harris was seen as winning the debate last night. But let's keep in mind that Donald Trump also landed some heavy blows. I thought particularly in his summing up, when he said, well, what have you been doing for the last 3.5 years? And I think that that was a good finish by Donald Trump.
Adelle, typically debates don't determine victories and losses at the hustings, and that's what Alastair is pointing out. But the fight is so neck and neck this time. Do you think the debate is going to impact the swing voter in a significant way this time?
I think Alastair is correct. The polls, as we saw from the 2016 election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, were very non-indicative of the final result, of course. They were leaning towards Hillary Clinton winning, and Donald Trump clearly took the race based on electoral college votes. But I think last night's debate did give a little bit of an edge to Harris. I do happen to think that there was a bit of a slight disadvantage also for Trump going into it, considering so much of the legacy media is just innately against him. And there are very leading questions attacking his, current situation instead of focusing on the issues, which gave Harris a slight edge in terms of being able to focus on the issues. That said, the debates are more of a, I'd say, way for people who have already largely the American voters who have, I think, made up their minds as to who they're sticking with. You have a percentage of swing voters who are kind of undecided in the middle, some who haven't yet registered, unregistered voters. And the debates mainly, I think, are meant to provide them with kind of a push over the edge to get them to register to vote and kind of make them decide who are they going to vote for. But I agree. I think that we need to still wait and see what this quote unquote October surprise is going to be. And God knows this election cycle has been chock full of surprises. Just look at what has been posted on social media and last night as well. I just hope it's nothing too crazy like the assassination attempt on Trump, which he was able to avert.
Well, 8 weeks can be a pretty long time in politics, definitely so. But while some of those claims and counterclaims that we heard in the debate need thorough fact checks, Alastair, given the current state of inflation and interest rates in the United States, which of these two candidates' economic plan, at least, seems more likely to stabilize the markets?
Well, with all due respect, Vikram, I wasn't aware that either candidate actually displayed any sense of a genuine economic plan last night. We heard the same 3 points from Kamala Harris repeatedly. No detail, doesn't amount to a plan. I don't think she added anything at all to our sense of how she would look to steer the US economy. Donald Trump, of course, we heard a lot about tariffs. Now, you heard what I had to say about tariffs on ET Now on Monday evening. I'm not going to repeat all that because I'm sure you have a lot of the same viewers tonight. But I do think that there is a genuine concern there for the US. I'm concerned about the prospect of a Trump presidency and tariffs. Most economists, I'm not going to say all economists, because of course one has to take account of very influential economists in Trump's world, such as Peter Navarro. Most economists think that that if Trump does what he says he's going to do, and as I said on Monday night, I think we do have to take him at his word to an extent at least. It will not only drive up inflation, but also be damaging to the US economy. And most of all, that it is US consumers who will pay, not China, contrary to what Mr. Trump was claiming.
Tariffs, of course, did feature as far as an economic plan. You're absolutely right, Alastair. We didn't get any clear picture from either candidate. But if you consider how the markets are responding, I don't know if that has anything to do with the debate. But right now, it's a patch of red, 1.5% cut on the Dow. We're looking at more than a percentage point cut on the Nasdaq, and the S&P is down by 1.5% as well. Of course, there is September volatility in play, and traders are assessing inflation data. But Adelle, on the future of the American jobs market, which of these two candidates seem to have a plan, if at all? Because on that rests a lot of the future moves on interest rates by the Fed, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I just want to address something quickly, if I may. Every incoming administration inherits the economic windfall of the previous administration. And we have to remember that the Biden administration engaged in a very expensive war in Eastern Europe, and that is going to fall into the pocketbook specifically of the American people. And so the economy, even no matter how great Trump's economic policy or Harris's economic policy may be, they're still going to experience a bit of a impact in terms of the end user, the American people, which they're going to see the cost of living go up. That said, I think that shifting to the jobs market, I think there's two very, very clearly different people when it comes to that. When you're talking about everyday Americans, the working class, of course, you're going to see Kamala Harris, pushing, which Democratic talking point, which is to support the federal minimum wage hike to $15 per hour. This, of course, is going to severely impact the workforce. And most people don't realize this. We're seeing an increase of replacement of actual human workers in traditional jobs. You want to make a reference to the McDonald's job, the burger joints, the ice cream shops, the convenience stores, small mom and pop shops that won't be able to afford to hire as many staff as they used to. And you have these machines, these robots that are taking orders now. So a $15 minimum wage hike, of course, it's going to help a lot of people who are able to acquire those positions that are going to be more limited in numbers, but it's also going to end up wiping out an entire subset of that working class and leave even more people without a job. Another way that it will work is social programs. We're going to see an increase of more social programs under, of course, a Democratic administration. That kind of goes hand in hand with the attempt to also increase the minimum wage, therefore making individuals who are going to be jobless more reliant on the so-called government teat.
So, yes.
People, of course.
No, absolutely. I mean, all of these points, when you talk about the jobs market in the US, there is a dichotomous view definitely on immigration, and that's going to have a play as well. Alastair, how could their respective policies on immigration affect the Indian diaspora, you think, professionals working in the US, particularly in sectors like IT?
That is the main focus of either of the candidates, actually. I think that relations between India and the US will continue to be sound, irrespective of who is in the Oval Office. And I think that you are going to continue to see America opening the door to skilled workers. The problem very much revolves around the southern border. And I honestly, I'm European. I live in Africa, but I'm European. We have the same immigration problems in Europe today. The solutions are not readily apparent. People aspire to move from economic hardship countries to places which they see as land of opportunity. And America is not suddenly going to be able to cut off illegal immigration, irrespective of Mr. Trump's plan to deport people. We saw the British government trying to bring in something similar, exporting people to Rwanda. Last British government, not this one, didn't happen, didn't actually dissuade the boats from crossing the channel. People are going to continue to come. This is going to continue to be a problem. Again, though, economists think that illegal immigration is actually good for keeping inflation down. It may be destroying jobs for genuine Americans, American citizens, as Donald Trump's claims it is. But I think a lot of the data are very ambiguous on this. And there are both pros and cons about allowing low-skilled immigrants into the country and allowing them to take jobs.
Also, Adelle, from what has been said so far in the run-up to the presidential elections, do you see India's status as an alternative to China for manufacturing getting influenced differently by a Trump or a Harris administration in the future?
I certainly do. I think that, of course, as Alastair mentioned, the US-India relationship will continue to flourish. I think that Modi has done a fantastic job maintaining his neutrality and approaching things in a pragmatic way with countries, including from a business perspective. His bottom line is to see India flourish. That said, I do happen to think that from an economic standpoint, there will be probably more of an opportunity for India to step up its attempts to replace China in many different sectors when it comes to manufacturing, should a Trump presidency take hold. And I think COVID was a big indicator of how much the supply chain issue on a global scale has been lacking by relying heavily and solely on China. That also is an opportunity for India to come in to help different countries diversify themselves, divest from being solely reliant on one country. And of course, all the inroads to Africa, where Alastair is located, he knows all too well what's happening there. So the opportunities are honestly endless. And I think that one thing I want to also point out is jobs creation. When the government puts out jobs reports, a lot of these jobs that are the increase in jobs numbers are actually temporary jobs, not permanent jobs.
True.
And that also said, low-skilled workers that come in, a lot of times I hear complaints from everyday Americans that they aren't actually offered or given the jobs that these low-skilled immigrants come in and take. And there's a bit of a discrimination against everyday Americans and a bias towards those who aren't, here, let's say legally or
Yes.
American national.
But like
So that's
Alastair very interestingly pointed out, that perhaps you need the immigrants to keep the inflation in America in check. How both these different approaches as far as Trump and Harris are concerned, how that pans out, that remains to be seen. But while targeting Trump, Kamala Harris has said that Trump would provide tax cuts to billionaires and big corporations, Alastair. What do you make of the higher corporate taxes that Trump is pushing for? Would it really help fund crucial infrastructure projects in America? Like Trump says, that would make America great again. Do you think that could happen?
Clearly, to be honest, this is a few years now since I was last in the US. But the US does desperately need to invest in infrastructure of all sorts, the electricity grid for starters, let alone roads, rail, and so on and so forth. And the money has to come from somewhere. And let's keep in mind that neither candidate has yet come up with a plan which is persuasive to most people in markets and most economists that they are going to get the deficit under control. Now, I hate to say this, but the Republicans can be very puritanical about the deficit when there's a Democrat in the White House. They are less so when there is a Republican in the White House. I don't see either candidate, whichever one is successful, doing much to get the deficit under control. And I do think that is a significant chicken which sooner or later is going to come home to roost. Maybe not in the next presidency, but markets have to take that into account. US Treasuries will remain, as we were discussing on Monday, of paramount importance. But there is this continuing problem over the way in which the deficit is running up in the US, and neither candidate has a plan for that. I do not believe that tariffs are going to resolve that problem. And I certainly don't believe that Kamala Harris's statements on economic matters to date give any indication of what her real spending is likely to be like. I think it's going to be significantly bigger than the sort of figures which she has been throwing around.
The various barbs that were flying around in that debate, economic plans and clarity of thought, that remained wanting from both sides in that debate, as Trump constantly brought up the Biden administration's failures, trying to tie Harris to those. The vice president, of course, responded and said, "You're not running against Biden." How easy is it going to be to shrug off the perceived failures of the Biden administration for Harris, despite the perception that she had the upper edge in that debate? All of that is going to be decided at the end of the vote that is going to be soon. But of course, we will keep tracking all that happens in the run-up to it. Adelle and Alastair, thank you very much for joining us with your views on this edition of India Tonight. Pleasure having you with us.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.